Hello, I'm Nick.
And I'm Rachel, and this is our Tiny Home on Wheels, which is a 2011 Chevrolet van that was formerly in service as an ambulance in British Columbia in Canada.
Welcome to the inside of our retired ambulance. It's super wide, which is great, but the biggest downside is that it's not very tall. So I'm about 6 feet and I can't quite stand up straight. I think you have to be like 5'8" and lower to stand up straight in here. But anyways, small price to pay. We're usually outside and enjoying the outdoors anyway. So we'll start over here. So this spice rack was actually an addition we made a little bit later, just because in our pantry it was pretty difficult trying to like dig down and get to all of our spices. Rachel and I both love cooking, so we decided we would add a little spice rack in here. And a cool part about this is it's actually like a false wall, and then this comes off here and we're able to get back, and you know, if we need to run any new wires or anything, we're able to do that super easily. This here is our air conditioner unit for the back. It doesn't work. We planned on hopefully trying to fix it at a later date, which is actually part of the reason why we had the false wall as well, so that we could get in there easily. Being from Canada, we don't really need an air conditioner all that often. Now that we're here in the desert though, we definitely find ourselves kind of wanting to use it a bit more. And then along here, so we have a little cabinet up here where we keep all of our dishes, cutlery, coffee mugs, all that fun stuff. Our induction stove was actually kind of a mistake, and we didn't know a whole lot about electrical, so I just thought, oh, you know, we have 2 deep cycle AGM batteries. If we just get 2 big ass solar panels to feed them, then that'll be enough to power our induction stove. We had to basically get our inverter sized for our batteries, and it's only 600 watts, so we can't power our induction stove, unfortunately, unless we're plugged into Shoreline power. But we do have like a little single burner propane stove that we keep just behind our fridge here, and that's basically what we cook on. It works pretty well. I mean, we can't really complain. Like, it's, you know, we usually cook simple kind of one pot meals anyways. We are kind of planning on potentially ripping this out and then putting in a propane stove, or alternatively, we do want to upgrade our battery bank at some point, and with doing that, we can also get a bigger inverter and then hopefully have the power to run one of these. The whole kitchen is just wrapped in contact paper. We didn't want to paint it, and we figured, oh, contact paper will work. And then we have our tiles back here, so they're just actually stickers that we found online and we just ordered. And they worked pretty well. They had kind of like a nice pop of color. So when you open up the door and you come in, this is kind of the first thing you see. So we wanted it to be kind of colorful and pleasing to look at. Then we've got our control panel in the center here. So this is something that came with the ambulance. Again, we just didn't want to start ripping stuff out, so we kept it. Here's our light switches here. We've got, I think, 4 different brightnesses, and then one of these buttons will control just the one over the kitchen. So if I'm still sleeping or Rachel's still sleeping and one of us wants to, you know, get up and start making coffee or something, that's super nice to have. And then the other ones just control 2 separate bars, and we just left the electrical in for those and put in new LED lights so they don't pull as much power. And then we've got our mason jars up here. This is actually Rachel's idea, to put these mason jars up here for storage for, you know, all of our spices and tea bags and things like that. And they're just plastic. They're kind of a nice touch, and I think they kind of bring it all together, make it feel more like a home, which is nice. This sink here, Rachel and I agree that it's like our least favorite part of our entire build. It's not even big enough to like wash our large plates in. We've talked about potentially replacing the induction stove and the sink, or at least moving the induction stove over and just getting ourselves like a bigger, deeper sink. Yeah, this is probably one of our biggest regrets of our build, is just having such a tiny sink. So it's just copper piping for the faucet, and then underneath here we've got PEX lines that run down and around, and then they just go down into the top of like a jerry can full of potable water, and then it's just got a hose that I can screw on and off. So it's super duper simple. And then we've just got our foot pump here that pumps us cold water basically. The cold water foot pump is something that we're actually perfectly fine with. We didn't really plan on being in cold temperatures in our van anyways. It wasn't really built for that. We wanted to be living out of it in the summer or traveling when it's winter. So the only thing that you know, I would maybe consider changing is just how our gray water collects. So we just got from the sink our P-trap here, and then it just goes down into like a big 5-gallon bucket. So that's a little bit of a pain, having to like take out all of our extra storage that we have in here and then take out the water and then get to our gray water. So that's a little bit of a pain, but I mean, it's not something that I'm too concerned about. Really, it's just the sink that we'd want to upgrade. So moving over to this side of the sink here, we have our chest style fridge. When Raychel and I were living in an apartment, we were so used to having lots of things for meals all the time. So with a smaller chest style fridge like this, we're usually buying meals for like 1 or 2 days, 3 days max at a time, just because there's not a lot of storage in here. It's really not too bad because you kind of get to pick what you eat every day, so that's kind of nice. We've got our more storage back here. So this is our gas stove that I was talking about, and then this is typically just where we keep like pots, pans, lids, things like that. We don't often find ourselves being off grid for super long periods of time. 3-4 days usually is like our max. As we saw under the sink, we have like a 5-gallon jerry can for our potable water. We have 2 of those, and I keep one of them in the back. So we only have 10 gallons of water, which, you know, I mean, if you're drinking all the water that you should be, you go through it pretty quick. So also we don't have like a shower or anything in this build. So again, not being able to shower for long periods of time, we do have to go into cities, and we have a gym membership that we use. The way that this thing is built is not for super long-term off-grid living. So moving over to this side of the kitchen, we've got our little baskets here that we kind of keep our dry food in. Just super easy to access, things like peanuts and, you know, stuff like that. And then moving down, this is actually our pantry area here. So if we just lift up this seat, we can go under, and this is where we keep the rest of our dry food. We've got like a little food processor in there. Yeah, just kind of storage for food related items. And then up front here, we've got an electric heater. So again, this is something that only works when we're plugged into shoreline power. So if we're plugged in somewhere like at a campsite, it's great because we can use our induction stove. We have heat, but you know, like I had mentioned, we want to kind of be somewhere warm anyways, so we don't typically find ourselves needing a heater. And then just along the side here, we've got our electrical outlet, so that just runs through into our electrical box and plugs into our inverter. And then this is just where we kind of charge our phones and cameras and all that kind of fun stuff. And then there is an outlet just above it, which again came with the ambulance, and it only works on shoreline power. So So what made us get an ambulance is basically just our budget. We're from Canada, so sprinters up there are pretty pricey. I mean, I think they're pretty pricey everywhere, but an ambulance was a little bit more in our budget, and although we got an ambulance just because that's all we could afford, I mean, we're definitely happy with it.
$8,000 was like our top idea for a budget, and we were just kind of like cruising everywhere, like on Facebook Marketplace, on Craigslist, and I saw an ambulance on Craigslist, and I was like, haha, like, wouldn't that be funny if we lived in an ambulance? And Nick was like, actually, that would be like super dope.
Yeah.
And so yeah, no, here we are. So the height of our ambulance is not a problem for me because I'm only 5'3", so I can actually go on my toes in the van, which is like my biggest flex when it comes to this ambulance. And this behind me here is the closest thing that we have to overhead storage. So we didn't build any overhead storage throughout the entire ambulance. I've seen other people do it, but we just didn't. We thought it would kind of like crowd the walls and make us feel a little tighter. And we love the width in our van, so we just kept it as is. And this shelf here already like kind of came with the van, and this used to be a whole wall back here that we knocked out. This is our like miscellaneous basket, and then we have hats and socks and undies for Nick and socks and undies for me. Behind us here, we had knocked out a whole wall and just put up curtains that are kind of sheer, and if I come across blackout curtains, I'm gonna get them, but we just haven't come across them yet, and ordering stuff on the road is not always fun. So then right beside me here is our toilet. We just have like a small Dometic porta potty, which works. We only go number 1 in the van, so number 2 is either out in the world or in a Walmart or wherever we find ourselves. Nick and I both work on the road, but before leaving for the road on this trip, we're working temp jobs in a city, so we find ourselves at Walmarts and stuff a lot of the time anyway, and it's not been a big deal for us whatsoever. Whenever I see someone with like a Nature's Head composting toilet, I'm like, oh, that'd be so nice, it's so interesting, but honestly, our setup works for us. So, and then beside me here is like one of these hanging closet storage baskets that you can get at Walmart or whatever. And when we got it, we kind of thought it would be just like temporary storage, like if we were to have like a big bag of chips that wouldn't fit in our pantry or something like that. And it's accidentally become like our linen closet. And when we first started putting stuff in it, we were like worried that stuff was gonna fall out, but actually when we're driving, it swings with the van. So it's worked out for us so far, and we haven't had anything too crazy happen. Something that I really wanted to incorporate into our van build was hooks. Like, I like hanging things up. I have a million tote bags. We were living in BC, like on the west coast of Canada, so we get a lot of rain, so umbrellas, rain jackets, that kind of stuff. So I definitely wanted to have hooks. I even want to add more. I thought about adding hooks here, but for now we have these hooks here. We have hooks behind here for our coats, hats, that kind of stuff. And at our step here, we created a little shoe rack. We just had a little bit more open space and didn't know what to do with it, so put a couple pieces of plywood, and now we have a place to put our shoes, so it's worked out pretty well. So I knew that getting a fan when we were designing our van build was obviously going to be an essential. I didn't realize how essential it would be, because originally we thought that we were going to be cooking with induction, and now we're cooking with propane, so we have to get a good airflow going. So this is just the fantastic roof vent. Pretty simple. It sucks in, sucks out, and then we have like a little window on the side of our ambulance that we can open up, so we get the airflow coming in and then going out of that fan. So it's worked out pretty well for us. So welcome to the back of our ambulance. It's a very, very simple build back here. So I think that if you've watched any van tour at all, you would have seen some sort of similar setup. So we have a bench on one side, bench on the other side, and we have a fixed bed. What I'm sitting on right now is our closet area. So Nick and I put all of our current clothes, or like this season's clothes, or whatever we're wearing at the time, that's all right beneath me here. And sharing a closet isn't something that's new to us. Before van life, we were kind of backpacking throughout Asia. We were living in Australia, so we're used to like sharing space, sometimes even sharing clothes. So we had to learn a new way of folding things up, but other than that, it's actually worked out pretty well for us. The only thing I really think is missing in terms of like our van build and where we store our clothes, I think that the space works for us here, but I really wish that we had more hanging storage for our clothes, because they do tend to get very wrinkled, and because it's a small space for 2 people, we're like rolling up our clothes super tiny in there. So right behind me here is our wall grid, and I always kind of like brag about this because I really like this area here. I really thought that we'd be using this as more storage, but we didn't really have a lot of stuff to fill it up with, so we kind of just put some like art. We printed out some pieces and things that we really like we have memories of our time in Cambodia together, and we both love Lil Peep, the rapper, and this is just like kind of a piece of us that I really like. This seat that I'm on, I actually feel weird sitting on it because it's normally Nick's seat. It's a little bigger, he's a little bigger than me, and I love the seat right across from me because it's where I do most of my work on my computer. We call that the Raychel size seat, and this is the Nick size seat, so yeah. So we opted for a fixed bed. I really admire people who take apart and put their beds together every day. That's awesome that they can do that. I cannot see myself having the discipline to do that every day. Nick and I, before even living in a van, we both just like to spend time in bed. We'll just like sit in bed on our iPad and computer, our phones, whatever. So it felt natural to us. And what is also really, really awesome about having an ambulance and having all this width at the back is that we didn't have to get a custom bed or trim the bed or anything. This is a full-sized full bed. This is our laundry bag here. It's getting kind of full because we've been off grid. And right beside me at the end here is where we keep our folding table. So we don't have any kind of like funky pull-out table or anything to eat on between the two spots, but we just bought these like $50 folding tables, and it fit perfectly in our van build. So we're like, oh nice, that will work for us. We have like a little bit of storage back here. We have like one bigger folding table and then one little one that we can use in the bed as well. We found a lumber yard in town that had cedar paneling, and that's what we ended up going with. We absolutely loved it. And of course we went with a different color stain for the ceiling than our walls. The walls were like an ebony stain. I thought it was going to be a lot more black than it was, but I really like how it turned out. And then the ceiling was like a gray wash that we stained. And then right beside me here is our cabinet, which was an absolute disaster to build. Neither of us had ever built a cabinet before, and Nick did most of the work, and it was pretty frustrating for us. So the size is kind of weird because like we wanted it to just be the length of the amount of space we have at the end of the bed. So it's kind of like skinny and tall. So we don't have like shelves in it. We just have belly baskets, and then we fill the belly baskets up with all sorts of things, like whatever we need in the van. So my hair stuff and medication and all that kind of stuff is back here. So our van build in total for the ambulance, it was $6,000 Canadian, and for the build it was $6,000 Canadian. So we spent $12,000 Canadian altogether. We don't have any like fancy features or anything. We don't even have like a pull-out table. We basically just spent the money on wood, cheap plywood, save costs there as much as we could. We also saved money with cheap cedar.
Yeah, like all of our wood and lumber that we used is all like low grade, which worked for us. We managed to get the whole thing built in, I think it was about 3 months total, or 2.5 months, while it was summertime in Canada. And that was with us having never done any of this stuff before. I mean, I've worked construction jobs, so I had pretty baseline knowledge of, how to do these kind of things, but it was just a learning process. Having it be an ambulance was super helpful just because everything is square. So in a Sprinter, you have, curvature, which makes it difficult to build. So having that 90-degree angle is really, really nice to build on. We didn't do anything too crazy or too fancy with it, and we managed to get it done in like a pretty quick time. So if it's, if you're not too familiar with it, I mean, we did it, so I'm sure you can too.
What's also interesting about our budget, what we say our budget was, that $6,000 was also to furnish the whole ambulance. So we didn't have any type of furniture or anything of our own. Before doing van life, we were kind of like backpacking and living overseas and doing that kind of stuff. So we didn't own anything. So when we're talking about $6,000, that's also us putting like pillows, bed sheets, like plates, all that kind of stuff. We didn't have any of that, which is a little bit different than people who obviously move into a van from their big home when they sell their home to move into a van. So it's a little bit different for us.
Yeah. So the ambulance is about 7 feet wide, which is a lot wider than most Sprinters. It's super nice having it be that wide, not only just so we have more room, but if we're sleeping, I know a lot of people in Sprinters, they have difficulty being able to stretch out, whereas we have a full-size bed and a little bit of room at the end of our bed as well. And then moving underneath the bed, we've got quite a bit of storage, like east-west storage, which is super great. And we kept the bed at a height where I would be able to sit up straight. So if I'm sitting up straight in the bed, my head is like, I think I have maybe an inch or two of room. Moving into the actual garage area, I guess you'd call it. Really, the main bit of storage that we have, like the main thing that's back here, is just all of our winter clothes. We've got some kind of box storage here, mostly clothes, some skateboard stuff as well. Toolbox, skateboards over on this side here, an outdoor barbecue, some keepsakes, our extra water, things like that. Just kind of the area that we store our things in that we don't always need access to. So moving over to our electrical box here, it's a bit of a rat's nest. We kind of left everything as I had mentioned, we left all the electrical kind of in there, and then we just kind of added where we needed to. So the main one being our solar panels and our solar controller here. So we have two 315 watt panels run in series, giving us 630 watts of power. To our controller here, and then just two deep cycle AGM batteries. The batteries and the solar panels were the two most expensive parts of our build. If we hadn't had to do the batteries, then I think the whole build was $6,000 Canadian total, so it would have been 5,000 Canadian without the batteries, and then if we didn't go with the big solar panels and controller and all that, then it would have been even less. So it's only $4,000 to build out the inside, which isn't too bad. The only other install that we've done, which we did recently, is our amp here. We decided to throw a sub in the back just so that we have music for the road. Traveling from Canada, it's quite a long way, so we wanted to have an alright sound system. So I decided to install a sub and a subwoofer in the garage area. So.
Thank you for coming with us into our van and letting us show you. We're always so excited to show people. We also have a YouTube channel. It's just our names, Nick and Raychel. It's Raychel with a Y. We're also the same on Instagram, Nick and Raychel. As well, we run a travel blog called notlux.com, and you can also find me on TikTok at notlux.
And all of those links you will find down below in the description.
Thank you so much for watching.